So if I asked you what makes a movie character seem, you know, just terrifyingly lonely, you'd probably point right to the script.
Right, yeah, like the dialogue.
Exactly. Or maybe you'd point to like a dramatic monologue, or even just the way an actor stares out a rain-streaked window.
Oh, classic trope.
Right. But what if the loudest cry for help in a film isn't spoken at all? What if the most intense emotion is actually being communicated by the exact 90-degree angle of a perfectly symmetrical coffee table?
It's so true. I mean, we have totally been conditioned to treat architecture in film as just like a container for the actors.
Just a box.
Exactly. We view it as a pretty box where the plot happens. But interior design actually speaks a completely separate language right underneath the surface. And it bypasses the intellectual part of your brain and goes straight to your nervous system.
And that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are cracking the code on the interior design of the 2026 Oscar nominees.
Which are just phenomenal this year, by the way.
Oh, unbelievably good. So we have pulled together all these production notes, architectural analyses, and like psychological breakdowns of these incredibly detailed sets. And the central thesis we found across all these sources is that in these films, space is not just a backdrop. Space is the character.
Yes.
It is the physical, tangible form of emotion.
Mm.
We were looking at how a room reveals everything that is unseen, like a character's hidden past, a secret trauma, a fracturing mind. And it's all communicated entirely through surfaces, voids, and the physics of light.
Because space conveys emotion indirectly, which is precisely why it works so well. I mean, think about it. When a character explicitly says, I feel alienated, your brain processes it logically.
Right, you hear the words.
Yeah, and you can choose to believe it or not. But when the camera shows you the way a harsh, cool-toned light hits a completely empty, highly reflective metal chair,
Ooh, yes.
your body feels the alienation before your brain even registers why. It taps into our evolutionary responses to our environment.
Which introduces a really interesting tension. Because if objects in spaces hold emotional weight, what happens when a space starts physically holding on to our memories?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. And conversely, what happens when you aggressively strip those objects away? Okay, let's unpack this by looking at our first film, Sentimental Value. Because the whole premise here is that the house itself acts as a direct emotional recording field.
It's so visceral.
It really is. The physical space changes in real time alongside the character's psychology.
And the production designers approached this in such a cool way. They actually constructed the exact same physical structure, but they dressed it to represent two entirely different psychological states. So the first phase is labeled the remembering space.
Right, phase one. The sources describe this incredibly specific, accumulated 90s-era Scandinavian aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think accumulated is like the operative word here. Every single item is a memory carrier.
Absolutely.
It's not disorganized, but it's dense. You had this heavily worn plush fabric sofa.
Oh, the IKEA Ektorp sofa, right.
Yes, the classic IKEA Ektorp. And it looks like it has absorbed like a decade of family movie nights.
Yeah.
And then you've got this Zara home armchair that's just perfectly broken in. The coffee tables are light pine, but you can barely see the wood grain.
Because it's just covered in life.
Exactly. Like that Mudo Toscane coffee table is completely covered in magazines, mugs, personal artifacts.
Well, to really understand the mechanism here, you have to look at how humans interact with texture. So soft, porous materials like heavy cotton weaves, untreated wood, plush rugs, they literally absorb sound waves.
Which physically makes the room quieter.
Right, but they also absorb the physical traces of humanity. They hold on to oils from our skin, they trap familiar scents, they show physical wear and tear.
It's proof that you exist.
Precisely. When a space is filled with these materials, it feels safe because it provides sensory evidence of a life lived over time. It basically creates a cocoon.
But then the film hits phase two. The character's psychology fractures, and the house shifts into the forgetting space.
Which is such a drastic pivot.
It's jarring. They switch to this stark, minimalist Scandi aesthetic. The cozy, rounded sofa is swapped for a blocky, rigid daybed with sharp corners. I think the note said it was an IKEA Hamnet's daybed.
Yes, and that Zara Homeshare 03, which is just so angular.
Right. The walls are suddenly laid bare, and all the personal objects are just consciously removed. Even the new sofa, the IKEA Kivik, is just stark and uninviting.
The designers actually referred to this technique as reverse decoration.
Oh, reverse decoration. I like that term.
Yeah, they subtracted the personal items first, and then they deliberately placed stark neutral furniture back into the void. And because there is less soft furniture to absorb the light and sound, the physics of the room change entirely.
Right. Footsteps echo.
The light bounces off the bare walls and feels noticeably harsher on your eyes.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the motivation here because I think we've all experienced a micro version of this impulse. To me, the minimalism in phase 2 isn't a design choice at all. It is a psychological defense mechanism.
How do you mean?
It's like when you go through a devastating breakup and your first instinct is to sanitize your life. You aggressively clear your digital browser history. You delete hundreds of photos in this manic sweep.
Oh, totally.
Right. Clearing out the remembering space is like sanitizing a wound. The character is stripping the room down to white walls and sharp angles because those soft fabrics hold onto memories. And right now, memory is an infection they are desperately trying to cure.
That covers the immediate psychological reaction perfectly. But if we push deeper into the architectural consequence, we hit a very dangerous threshold.
Okay.
Because when you start stripping away the physical evidence of your life to avoid pain, where does it stop? That question leads us directly to our next film, Begonia, which takes that impulse and pushes it to a terrifying extreme.
Wait, I'm a bit confused here. If the character in Sentimental Value is using minimalism to forget and protect themselves, why is the minimalism in Begonia described by our sources as downright terrifying? Aren't they both essentially just taking furniture out of a room?
It comes down to the difference between emotional distance and total alienation.
Ah, okay.
In Sentimental Value, the space is empty, but it's still fundamentally a human dwelling. It's just a dwelling that is trying to heal.
It's a hospital room, basically.
Right, but in Begonia, the minimalism is weaponized by actively removing the human-centric focus altogether. The sets are defined almost entirely by glass, polished steel, and highly reflective surfaces.
Right. The sources mention mass-produced steel and leather chairs and frozen glass coffee tables.
Yes, like that Zara Home steel and leather chair.
And the Mugo frozen coffee table.
Huh.
And that Zara Home steel stool. These are objects with zero porosity. They're literally cold to the touch.
Precisely the opposite of the porous memory carriers we just talked about. Glass and steel repel humanity. They don't absorb sound, they amplify it, they don't hold warmth.
It's so hostile.
What's fascinating here is how this answers a frequently asked question we found in the research. We kept seeing people ask, why does certain cinematic minimalism make the audience feel physically uncomfortable?
Yeah, why does it make your skin crawl?
It's because perfection, when stripped of texture and evidence of human touch, does not produce comfort. It produces a visceral feeling of being unmoored. You are looking at a space that refuses to accommodate a human body, and your nervous system reacts with low-level anxiety.
So if Begonia uses perfection as a weapon to push the audience away, it's fascinating to look at characters who use that exact same pursuit of perfection to desperately pull themselves together.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to our next focus. We are looking at the geometry of escapism versus the chaos of reality. Let's look at Marty Supreme.
The designers for Marty Supreme utilized a concept known as the geometry of loneliness.
I love that phrase.
It's so good. On screen, we are presented with this incredibly sophisticated, flawless 1950s New York luxury apartment. The layouts are perfectly balanced. The surfaces feature rich mahogany and polished brass.
But the twist is that this gorgeous mid-century aesthetic only exists inside the character's imagined life. It's a total fantasy.
Right.
The actual physical spaces Marty inhabits are drastically rougher, emptier, and unfinished. The luxury we see is a visual representation of his profound longing.
And notice the mechanics of that fantasy. The idealized space uses one strong focal piece in every room.
Like that Mudo Kensington leather sofa.
Exactly. A heavy, grounded leather sofa, illuminated by perfectly balanced, homogeneous light.
The Mudo Next lamp provides that light, right?
Yes, and the Mudo Lita C table right beside it. There are no harsh shadows anywhere. But more importantly, there is a deliberate, obsessive reliance on symmetry.
So what does this all mean? To me, Marty's imagined luxury feels a lot like curating a highly symmetrical, perfectly filtered social media feed.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
You crop out the dirty laundry in the background,
Oh.
you adjust the lighting, you project this incredibly balanced lifestyle to the world, And you do it entirely to mask the fact that your actual physical day-to-day life feels totally empty and disconnected.
That is true on the surface, but the reality of Marty's psychology is actually far more tragic than curating a social media feed.
Really? How so?
Well, on social media, you are performing for other people, right?
Yeah, of course.
Marty is performing for himself. He isn't trying to trick an audience. He is using rigid symmetry to convince his own brain that his life has order. Symmetry in architecture implies predictability.
Oh, wow.
He needs that flawless geometry because the alternative, facing his own crushing isolation, is too painful. The perfection is a life raft.
That makes the contrast with our next film, The Secret Agent, hit so much harder. Because in The Secret Agent, there is no life raft of imaginary perfection. We are dropped into 1970s Brazil, and the reality is authentic, unavoidable chaos.
Right. And I should note, the interiors in The Secret Agent aren't dictated by an aesthetic ideal or a character's daydream. They are shaped by a volatile, oppressive political regime.
And just to be clear for the listeners, we are just reporting on the historical context the production designers used here, not taking any political stance on the actual history.
Right, absolutely. The design sources just highlight that when the world outside your window is incredibly dangerous and unpredictable, your interior space naturally reflects a frantic survival instinct.
The design notes call out how mismatched everything is. You have rigid, heavy, modernist cabinets like that Mudo Penglai Zen cabinet, shoved right up against cheap, flimsy, mass-produced pieces, like this specific H&M home product they sourced.
And the layouts feel entirely unfinished.
Yeah. You've got that beautiful Mudo Grace TV console, but it's completely swallowed by the clutter. The objects in the rooms are just completely incompatible with each other, layered together out of pure necessity rather than style. It leaves this lingering claustrophobic feeling everywhere you look.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a brilliant thematic mirror between these two films. Both Marty and the characters in The Secret Agent use space as a coping mechanism, but they do it in completely opposite ways.
That makes sense.
Marty retreats into an imagined symmetry to escape the weight of his loneliness. But the characters in The Secret Agent use that messy, layered, incompatible clutter to carve out the smallest possible fraction of autonomy. When the government outside your door is chaotic and life-threatening, simply arranging a mismatched cabinet and a cheap table in your living room becomes a radical act of defiance. It is the only square footage on Earth where you have any real control.
The living room as the absolute last stronghold of personal sovereignty. That is an incredibly powerful way to look at clutter.
It really changes how you view a messy room.
It does, and it serves as a great bridge to our final thematic section. We are moving from spaces shaped by internal psychology and external politics to spaces that physically mirror the tangible biological world. We are talking about the organic rhythm of nature versus the stitched-together anatomy of a body.
This is where interior design intersects with evolutionary biology. Let's look at the organic side first with the film Hamnet.
Such a beautiful movie.
Incredible. And the approach to space here is breathtaking because the interior isn't treated as a shelter from nature. It is designed as a seamless continuation of the natural world outside.
The recurring word in the sources is rhythm. These spaces feel like they grew out of the earth over centuries. They are intensely lived in.
Absolutely.
Like none of the surfaces are perfectly smooth, and absolutely nothing looks like it was placed there by an interior decorator for a magazine shoot.
No, it's totally intuitive.
The design rhythm is heavily dependent on how natural light interacts with the room. It enters softly, it gets absorbed by thick, hand-woven fabrics, and is diffused by raw, aged wood, like that Zara Home ash wood cradle.
Yes, or that H&M home product they use for the textiles.
Right, and that Zara Home Chair 04, just soft lines everywhere.
There is a concept in environmental psychology called prospect and refuge theory. Humans evolved to seek out environments that offer shelter, meaning refuge, while still allowing us to safely observe the world, which is the prospect.
Oh, right, like needing a cave to hide in, but wanting to see if a tiger's coming.
Exactly. Hamnet perfectly embodies this. The mandate for the designers was to completely avoid objects with sharp manufactured edges or brand new finishes. The space is supposed to flow, simulating the safety of a natural enclosure.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how fragile that organic flow is.
Oh, it's so delicate.
If you took one of those polished, manufactured steel stools from Begonia and dropped it into the middle of the Hamnet set,
It would ruin everything.
instantly, the audience's brain would instantly reject it. It would be like dropping a neon plastic toy onto a completely untouched forest floor. It hasn't grown there. The eye catches the artificial reflection of light, and it just shatters the illusion of the organic rhythm.
The neon toy in the forest is an apt visualization. It triggers an innate biological alert because it doesn't belong in the ecosystem.
Right.
And understanding that biological alert is the perfect way to examine the exact opposite of organic growth, forceful, unnatural construction. Which brings us to Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Oh, Del Toro never does subtle.
Ever.
And this is where design gets incredibly visceral. He focuses on physically building a Gothic world that feels intensely tangible and heavy.
In Frankenstein, the interior design completely violates that prospect and refuge safety we just talked about. The primary location is the doctor's laboratory, which is designed as this towering vertical structure perched on a cliff.
Sounds terrifying already.
But the genius isn't just the Gothic verticality, it's the anatomy of the room itself. The space is not decorated, it is anatomical.
The sources describe the lab as being assembled from wildly different architectural references and time periods. It is layered, heavily textured, and literally stitched together from the dead pieces of other buildings.
Exactly.
The room itself is the monster. And to emphasize that, the designers abandon soft, flowing natural light. Instead, they hit these heavy, mismatched pieces like that ornate Zara Home goldwood mirror and the Zara Home ceramic candle holder.
Or even that Zara Home satin blanket, which looks so out of place.
Right. They hit them all with an intense directional light from a single source, like a surgical lamp.
Or a lightning strike. When a single harsh light hits deep textures, it casts incredibly long, distorted shadows. It throws off our depth perception. The room feels cobbled together, which triggers that same biological anxiety we feel when something unnatural has been forced into existence.
This raises an important question, and it really forces you to look at architecture through a completely different lens.
It really does.
We usually think of a house as a static box that we fill with pretty things. But Frankenstein challenges you to think of space as a literal body. The walls are the skin, the wooden beams are the bones, the electrical wiring is the nervous system. It has been anatomically stitched together to hold life, even if that life is entirely unnatural.
It fundamentally rewires how you perceive the built environment. When you look at a room, you start asking, is this space a flowing, organic extension of nature, or is it an assembled, stitched-together shelter fighting against the elements? Space is never just empty air.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this deep dive. If there is one core truth to take away from the production design of these 6 films, it is that space is the physical manifestation of our internal world. We've seen it mapped out across the emotional spectrum today.
We really have.
Sentimental Value showed us how porous materials hold memory and how stark angles are used to violently forget. Bugonia used sterile metal and reflective glass to weaponize alienation.
Right.
Marty Supreme built a mid-century fortress of symmetry to cope with profound loneliness. The secret agent used mismatched, desperate clutter to carve out control amidst chaos. Hamnet tapped into evolutionary biology to create the flowing rhythm of nature. And Frankenstein stitched together architectural bones to turn a room into a living body.
It is a profound framework for watching cinema, but it also prompts a very practical question.
Oh, yeah.
The source material frequently addressed whether audiences can or should apply these cinematic design principles to their own homes.
Right. Like, can I just look at the raw ash wood and soft fabrics of Hamnet and try to copy-paste that organic rhythm into my modern concrete apartment?
The consensus is a strong warning against direct replication. You don't want to live inside a movie set because a movie set is designed to broadcast a heightened, specific narrative for 2 hours.
That makes sense.
The key is to extract the mechanisms we've discussed, how porous materials absorb sound and memory, how symmetry affects your nervous system, how light interacts with texture, and apply them to the genuine reality of your life.
So don't build Marty Supreme's aggressively perfect, symmetrical living room if what you actually need is human connection and warmth.
Exactly the opposite. If you crave connection, you need a space that forgives messiness, a space that invites people to leave a trace of themselves behind. You let the genuine emotional function of your daily life dictate the physical form of the space.
I love that. Form following authentic emotion. And that leaves us with one final, lingering thought to process. We spent this time exploring how minimalism can systematically strip away our emotional anchors, and how the chaotic, layered clutter of our accumulated objects acts as a direct physical recording of our deepest memories and coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So I want you to take a moment and look around you. Look at the room you're sitting in at this exact second. Look at the textures you've chosen, the objects you've piled up, and the specific empty spaces you've left blank. If an absolute stranger walked into that room right now, without ever speaking a word to you, what would they deduce about your current psychological state?